Here we go, everyone. Let the 450 swap begin. We are tearing down the KLX basically to the frame. Only thing we're gonna leave on, really, the radiator, airbox. Of course, wheels and tires, we're gonna have this as a roller for a little bit. Probably gonna remove the lighting assembly speedometer because we don't need that anymore. So the KLX is pretty much where we left off when we diagnosed the issue with the 351 motor. Then I introduced the 450 swap project. Sorry it's taken so long to actually start the project. Finished school, got my truck, went down to the desert, but now we are getting rolling on this thing because I really want to get it done before summer ends. So we are pretty much at the point where we've got all the accessories off that we can pull the bottom end slash a little bit of the top end out of this bike. Got the water hose removed from the radiator. Nothing up front anymore in terms of the accessories that's going to hold us back from pulling the motor. Had to remove the return spring for the brake. Service manual says remove the foot peg. I don't really see why. We got the terminal slash connector to the starter removed here. Crankcase ventilation removed from the airbox. Got the regulator rectifier removed here. That's coming out with the engine. Got the ground in the back here removed. Got the neutral safety switch here removed. That's gonna come out with this harness as well. I think that is it in terms of connectors once we get this squared away here, and then after that it's just the motor mount bolts. Put the bike up on the stand, removed the swing arm pivot bolt, got the chain removed as well. So we are just about ready to pull this motor. Then after that, like I said, we can start stripping down the wires on this thing and ECU main wiring harness, because we're not going to need that anymore for the 450 swap. All right, day 2 here. Pretty much the only thing left to do is remove the crankshaft sensor, all this stuff. So we got to take off the side cover. Pretty much the only way we're gonna get by that. Let's see, harness goes up here. Yeah, ties in to all this stuff, which we will be taking off, but to get the motor out, I guess it is just simplest that we take the side cover off. All that work for that, huh? So I ended up putting the cover back on because I figured it would just be smarter to go ahead and remove the harness and take it out with the motor, because I'm going to be cutting all the wires, well, not cutting the wires off, but the zip ties holding the harness on, I'm going to be cutting that off here in just a few short minutes. So we're just going to remove the harness with the engine. So everything should be off the motor now that we can start taking off the motor mount bolts, get this bike on a stand. You'll see in a second here, but I think we are good to go. All right, bike is up on the stand. Don't judge my ghetto lifting methods. I don't have a motorcycle jack stand, I have a car jack stand, but the bike always likes to fall off when I put it on there. So we're using a cinder block and some weights. But hey, if it works, it works. So motor mount bolt here, motor mount bolt right there, and swing arm pivot bolt, and we should be good to go. So here we go. After months of waiting, the motor is finally coming out of the 351. Bolt number 1 out. And now you can see front motor mount is out. So last thing should be the swing arm pivot bolt. The motor, I can't do it with one hand, but the motor does pivot about that axis. And I can tell you what, we're gonna need the good old impact for this. So let's get the ripper out. Just like that. Here we go. Alright, motor is just about out. There we go. Motor is out. Well, here we have it. Man, now that the motor's out, frick, 450 motor is looking pretty good, sitting pretty in there. All right, and the KLX is as a roller right now. Suspension, oh, it's amazing how much the motor makes the bike. I mean, obviously, duh, to make it move, but like in terms of suspension, all that, you can't even compress the suspension. This thing feels like a mountain bike. We should take this down some downhill trails while the motor's out of it. But yeah, as you can see, now that everything's out, once we get all the wiring out of the way, we're gonna have a pretty decent amount of room to get that 450 motor in. So in terms of electronics, we are going to be removing all of this. Won't need the KLX clutch because we're going to be switching to the hydraulic clutch of the KX. So that's going to be coming off. Light's going to be coming off. Front and rear brake, that'll stay on. We're going to have to wire up our brake switches to keep it street legal. But yeah, all these sensors is coming off. We got the wiring harness for the KX. It's much simpler on the KX. There's hardly, compared to this, there's hardly any wires. So I guess the next step now is to start tearing these wires off here. I mean, it's gonna be kind of tedious to take the headlight off and the speedometer, but other than that, it's gonna be pretty straightforward. First thing we got to do here for the electrical to start removing everything, so we gotta get rid of this headlight here because most of the wiring harness is tied up in it or behind it. To remove that, we got to remove the front fender, then its mounting bolts here, and speedometer should come off with it, or right here. Then once we get that off, we can go ahead and start stripping the harness off the bike. All right, kill switch and throttle cable assembly is off. All right, making progress here. Most of the harness is gone from the front. Okay, so we're getting pretty close here to getting the wiring harness stripped off the bike. Pretty much last thing we need to do now is the back half of the bike, which is just going to be pulling off all of these fuses, relays, and whatnot. It's kind of a mess, but harness is completely disconnected from all the brackets back here, and now we just need to pull it through. And I'm thinking we'll probably pull it through here. Seems like the most feasible option. And the harness is out, thank goodness. So there you have it. The KLX is fully stripped down. I mean, we got stuff like the ignition here, which is built onto the frame. The speedometer, I don't know what to do with that. Probably just zip tie that up there for now. And the kickstand switch. But other than that, we are fully stripped down. And I'd say we're off to a pretty good start for the 450 swap on the KLX. So now moving forward here with the KLX, we are gonna go ahead and test fit the motor next video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We're gonna see how my measurements stacked up and if this job is gonna be as feasible as I thought. I'm pretty sure it will be, but especially since we got the motor out and I see how much space we have here to work with, there are a couple of things that I know I need to work on. Probably we're gonna have to adapt a KX fuel tank to the KLX in order to work with the KX fuel pump. And like I said in the introduction to the build, the throttle body on the KX 450 is pointed outward that way, and on the KLX is pointed this way. So we're gonna have to figure out how we can get the routing back over here, or somehow get like a custom airbox type of design type of thing here. I'm not sure, but you guys will see more of that in the next video. Now, basically, the KLX is just a glorified mountain bike with some pretty sick suspension. Maybe while we're at it, we should just put an electric motor in this thing, call it good, see how torquey it is. And the frame is pretty light, but I don't know, it's still a steel frame. I bet if you were to strip down the KX over here, it'd be way lighter. But we should be dumping some weight with all the electronics we shed on the KLX here once the 450 motor's in. But I think that is going to do it. So that is going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you stay tuned for the upcoming build series with KLX 450 now. We should be able to get going pretty good on the bike. And within a couple of weeks, we should have the motor mounted. I'm going back down to the desert because my dad's friend is the one who's going to help me make those mounts. So I have a date planned, and that's when we need to have the motor in here mocked up, so that way we know exactly what we need in terms of mounts. So we're gonna go ahead and get going on this project. I hope you guys are excited. Be sure to share this video, but if you're in the motorsports, you're in the right place. With all that being said, join the club, and I'll see you in the next one.